Welcome to the Rockstar Principles Podcast, coming straight to you from Rock and Roll, USA, covering the latest and greatest in educational leadership trends, news, and awesomeness for principals all over the world. Now, here are your hosts, the boss, John Ross, and the Doctor of Proctors, Nick Indeglio. Today, the Rockstar Principles Podcast brings you a very special episode involving one of the most prominent and important topics in education today, school safety. The rate of people killed by guns in the U.S. today is 19.5 times higher than similar high-income countries in the world. Over the last 30 years, America has mourned at least 61 mass murders. Since the horrific attack on Columbine in 1999, school shootings and violence have increased across the country. There have been over 31 school shootings since Columbine. Combined school shootings in every other country in the world since that time is less than 14. Despite these facts, our schools, home to our most important and cherished gifts, our children, continue to be grossly underprepared and ill-equipped to handle the potential of violence that exists. Today, Jon and Nick bring you a special interview with the owner and founder of Direct Measures International and Attack Countermeasures Training, Alon Stivi, who advocates a different mindset and proactive approach to school safety. We guarantee that once you listen to this podcast, your thoughts on school safety will never be the same.
Tragedy on a school campus.
Shock, sorrow, and disbelief.
A teacher was killed, as was a student who opened fire, and 2 students are hospitalized.
More questions than answers.
Who this person was, how this was orchestrated, the motive behind something so senseless.
This is Breaking News.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wendy DeMonte.
I'm Kristen Remington. We continue to follow a tragic breaking news story out of Sparks after police say a student opened fire at Sparks Middle School around 7:15 this morning.
That's right. That student died along with a teacher who is being hailed a hero.
This day, when a searing tragedy struck in a place parents felt their children were safe. The worst grade school shooting in U.S. history, at least 27 dead, 20 children, 7 adults, including the principal. And the gunman killed himself. And all over this town, in churches like the United Methodist Church behind us, well, the lights are on and they are still open for prayer tonight.
A school comes under siege. When 2 students launch a deadly assault on Columbine High.
The whole time I just pretended to be dead.
At the time, it was the worst school shooting in American history. There were a total of 15 bodies. There were 11 males and 4 females.
Our guest today, Mr. Alon Stivi, is the president, founder, subject matter expert, and lead trainer of ACT CERT. He is an internationally recognized leader on school and corporate security, violence prevention, counterterrorism, and travel safety. He earned his reputation through first-hand experience and has demonstrated expertise in predicting and managing violent threats. He is the founder and president of Direct Measures International, a security company providing a full range of interdisciplinary training, consulting, and protective services, and the founder and CEO of Outcome Logic, a provider of crisis management and safety education software solutions for governments, municipalities, businesses, and families. Mr. Stivi taught close combat tactics to the U.S. Navy SEAL CQB instructors and trains police officers on response to terrorist attacks through his Terrorism Responder course funded by the Department of Homeland Security. He is a certified police officer standard training, use of force and firearms instructor, and an NRA range safety officer. He teaches university-accredited workshops on violence management and is involved in research on school security and safety since 1999. Mr. Stivi is certified by the Department of Justice in Dignitary Security Protection and has protected world leaders and Fortune 500 executives since 1998, including Israeli prime ministers, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and more. Prior to his arrival in the U.S. in the early 1980s, Mr. Stivi served as a platoon sergeant in the Israeli Special Forces and participated in missions in defense of the State of Israel. He trained troops for combat in the areas of small unit infantry tactics, airborne operations, infiltration, exfiltration, close combat, and emergency medicine. Mr. Stivi has been studying martial arts since the age of 9 and is the U.S. Master Instructor of the Hizdarut Israel Survival System, the only system in the world specially developed to combat terrorism, and he's a 2-time World Martial Arts Masters Hall of Fame inductee and the World Full Contact Survival Fighting Champion title holder in 1994. Mr. Stivi is a member of FBI InfraGard, the American Society of Industrial Security, and a training advisor for the International Association of Counter-Terrorism and Security Professionals. He's a board advisor, member of the Center for Unconventional Security Affairs at the University of California, Irvine. He is an ICS NIMS certified and serves as an active terrorism liaison officer and reserve deputy with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, Emergency Operations Bureau. Mr. Stivi has been featured on network television, radio and films, and in national print publications across North America. Among his television and print credits, he has been featured on CNN, NBC Dateline, ESPN, MTV, The Travel Channel, NBC's Extra, ABC's, Fox 11 News, Clear Channel Radio, The Wall Street Journal, the Journal of Counterterrorism and Homeland Security, the LA Times, the Orange County Register, Tycoon Magazine, Chief Security Officer Magazine, Rob Report Magazine, The Security Magazine, The Security Management Magazine, and also hosts his own radio show called Fearless Life on Jerusalem Pulse Radio. All right, welcome back to the Rockstar Principles Podcast. Nick and John are here today with a very special episode. We have a room full of extremely important people, both with the Downingtown Area School District, and our very special guest is Mr. Alon Stivi, and today's interview is going to be all about not just school safety, but talking about ways that we as administrators, as teachers, and students can be proactive in defending ourselves and protecting our lives. A lot has changed in the past 20 years in public education, and that's what we are here to talk about. Joining us today is a robust panel. In addition to Mr. Stivi, we have Mr. Bill LaTorre, who we will talk about and talk to as well, Mr. Rob Farina, our assistant principal at Downingtown Middle School, and Dr. Rob Reed, who is the director of K-12 principals for the Downingtown Area School District. So we're going to jump right in, Mr. Stivi, and ask, what inspired you to begin training schools and school districts in the ACT method?
Well, I came to this country over 20 years ago from Israel to teach Americans how to survive the threat of terrorism. I was first a trustee of terrorism in Lebanon and in Israel, and I understood back then that they don't stop at the Middle East. They intend to take their war and their fight to the rest of the world, and that America, a friend of Israel, is a particular target, and I wanted to make a difference. So I came here, and I started to train law enforcement and military, U.S. military, in counterterrorism tactics, and I had 4 children. They all go to school, and Columbine happened. And that kind of made me realize how unprepared we were as a country, and particularly law enforcement at the time, to intervene and respond in the event of an active shooter. So I decided to utilize my experience in teaching, training, and in the field of counterterrorism and security to develop a training program for law enforcement, first responder, which is called Terrorism Responder. And I've taught that to multiple agencies across the nation, and it teaches how to intervene in the event of an active shooter and how to intervene rapidly and effectively. And in doing so, I came to the realization that it doesn't matter how well trained our first responder law enforcement personnel are going to be, they will still be, in most cases, late. It's just due to the fact that it takes time to get to the area, go through traffic, and even if you get there on time, many of the campuses are very large. It takes a lot of time to develop a common operational picture, meaning knowing where the threat is within the campus, how many perpetrators there are, and develop a plan of action and reaction to it. And time is of the essence when we deal with active shooter and terrorist attack. I mean, an active shooter or terrorist goal is to kill as many people as possible within the shortest amount of time. They know that law enforcement is on their way, and they want to complete as much killing as possible before law enforcement arrive. So they are in a hurry, and we are in a hurry to respond. But typically, in most of these incidents, a response is no earlier than 10 to 15 minutes. And unfortunately, within that time frame, most casualties have occurred already. So it dawned on me that, even though I developed a very good, effective program for law enforcement, it wasn't enough. And I wanted to do something more. So I've developed a program that trained what I term the on-location responder, the people that are on site of the incident, the school staff and faculty, on how to respond in the event of an active shooter or a terrorist attack, and respond safely and effectively to reduce the amount of casualties and improve safety for the students and the occupant.
Mr. Stivi, first, I want to thank you again for coming and joining us, Mr. LaTorre as well. I want to thank you for joining us. As I was saying to you before we started, people who are regular listeners know that Nick and I usually try to interject a little bit of laughter and humor, and that's very difficult for us on this topic. So people who listen to us normally will notice right away that we're much more serious, as we should be, about this topic. One of the things when I think about, I've been in education for 20 years, and I just think about over that time span, I was an assistant principal when Columbine happened, and the things that happened as a result of Columbine in schools. We reacted rather than proactive. We reacted, we respond. And it reminded me at the time a lot of what my parents had told me about what school was like in the 50s and early 60s during the nuclear era, during the Cold War, where they would practice drills about hiding under a table, hiding under a desk in the event of a nuclear bomb going off, and how silly that is to think about that, in that, that's really going to help you. And I know a portion from viewing your videos, a portion of what you talk about is that passive response and how that's not going to help you, taking that passive response. So why is it that you think as either as Americans or as a school system, why is it that we're so hesitant to take that proactive response? Why are we so far behind, do you think? Because at least in my opinion we are. We're really behind when it comes to responding proactively to this kind of threat to our schools.
Right, that's a good question. I don't want to generalize, but we all would agree that response is always late, right, by definition. And we live in a society that is what I term a 911 society. We are trained, and taught that, hey, you got a problem, pick up the phone, dial 911 and wait. Whether it's a burglary or a crime or an active shooter, just simply dial and wait. The fact of the matter is no longer the case. I don't know if it's ever been the case. Even in big cities, response is always late. I mean, the Department of Homeland Security is now formally telling all the citizens of the United States that even in the event of a large-scale disaster, we have to be self-sustaining and self-sufficient for at least 96 hours. And that is conservative. In some area, it will be weeks before you really get some serious help from our government. It's not that they don't want to help. Of course they do. It's not that they're not trying. It's that the magnitude of the problem in large-scale disaster, for example, is really big. And it takes time. I mean, look at Hurricane Sandy, how long it took to recover from that, for example. In a similar manner, we are thinking and believing that the response of law enforcement, even of an active shooter or terrorist attack, will be immediate. But it's impossible to have an immediate response unless you are on the scene. So we need to get over that mentality and understand, internalize that. And it's kind of a paradigm shift in the way we think, right? And part of that paradigm shift, the challenge with it is that we have a denial syndrome. Most people, by being human, don't like to think about these unpleasant tragedy and horrific circumstances, right? We would rather think about the positive things in life. So when an incident happened, everybody talks about it for a week or two or three or four, and then we move on.
Right.
And we have tests to do, and we have children to educate, and in so doing, though, we are shoving under the rug the concerns and the potential solutions that we do need to look at in order to address this issue, because they will continue to occur. I mean, this is a guarantee. It's not because I'm saying so. We've seen an increase in this type of incident in the last few years. Just like on 9/11, on those flights, the passengers didn't do anything because they did not expect that they needed to do anything, and they were told back then, when there is a hijacking, land the aircraft and it will be negotiated. Well, nowadays, no hijacker will be successful on an aircraft again, because all passengers know this is a one-way street and we have to fight, and all passengers will fight and have fought, for example, with a shoe bomber and other incidents on aircraft. When in a similar manner, there needs to be a paradigm shift in the way we think about school safety. It is not up to someone else to take care of this. There's no one solution. It's up to us to take a stand and save ourselves if it comes down to it.
Earlier today, John, we were interviewing with NBC 10, and Mr. Stivi made a really relevant point directly connected to the 9/11 conversation, and he had said if the passengers on those flights had known that they should have been fighting then history itself would have been different.
Sure.
And
right. Yeah.
The past 15 years would have been completely changed. And
completely.
Yeah, in terms of war and terrorism and soldiers' lives.
And economy.
Yeah, it's a definite big one there. So,
wow.
So I was going to say, I think what's important to realize here is it really is as simple as changing mindset. If we can change the mindset of faculty and administrators in schools, that will go a very, very long way towards catching up from being behind. Because it is important for everybody in school to realize that every police officer, having been in law enforcement, I can tell you, every police officer wants to be there. If they know that a life is at risk, they want to be there to do everything they can to stop it. The only problem is, I've been in a car and it's very frustrating when you get that call and you can't be there immediately. You know that there's going to be a minute or several minutes until you arrive to be able to intervene on behalf of that person. So really, from a mindset perspective, the people in school need to understand that they need to buy themselves time. They need the skills and the knowledge on what to do to buy themselves time successfully, so that when law enforcement arrives, they can enter the building and neutralize that threat.
our podcast is aimed primarily at principals, educational leadership. Sometimes they're the people who are making the decisions about what type of training, how we're going to spend our professional development money, and making those big what's important determinations. What would be the single most important message you would send to principals surrounding an active shooting situation?
I think the most important message I will tell them is that it's up to them. The survival and safety of their student and ultimately the success of their career is up to them. They shouldn't leave it to anybody else. There's no one solution. No one else on the outside has the solution. The solution is a combination of different elements, and they are at the center of it. When you implement security measures, whether it's better locks on the door or alarms or camera system, or even if you put a guard or an armed guard at the door, it's only part of the solution. You need to know how to recognize signs of potential aggression in individuals from the outside or inside. You need to know how to prevent this type of aggression by sharing essential element of information with other schools and with law enforcement. You need to know how to respond in the event of an attack, both from an evacuation standpoint, a reunification standpoint, as well as a barricading and lockdown standpoint, and if everything else failed, from a last resort standpoint, to fight and stay alive. All that's done by the people on the ground, and that's done through education. School safety, in my mind, is an educational challenge more than anything. And that's what we do in school. We educate. So why not educate ourselves and the next generation of Americans and children to be safer, and thus create a safer society?
During the, to address that specifically, during the interview today with NBC 10, one of the things that we practiced was barricading a door. That could have been, a room penetrated by a shooter or a threat that would come inside. there's people out there, I'm sure, listening right now who are thinking, "Oh my God, why would we do that? We should hide. We should just shut the door and we should hide and stay as quiet as possible." Your techniques are very different than that. So, how would you address the resistors to that type of philosophy?
Well, hiding is definitely a part of the response that people need to do. You do not want to make yourself a target, so you conceal yourself as much as possible. The fact of the matter, though, is the shooter knows you're there, especially when they know that the standard response in all schools is lockdown, regardless of what's going on. So by definition, by lockdown, they know you're going to be there in that classroom or in that office. And most cases, they have a hit list. They're looking for specific people, specific teacher, the principal, specific classmate that they're looking to kill. So they know you're on a lockdown. They know where you're at. They know where the classroom or that office is. They're going to find you there. And unless your lockdown is not effectively barricading that space that you are in, you simply trapping yourself. That's not going to save you. Hiding under a desk once the shooter entered the room, it's not going to save you. That's where people die. Survivability hiding under a desk, being shot from 2-3 feet away, is zero. Most of these shooters practice shooting targets on the floor. You know, they record videos of themselves before they do this thing.
Yep.
And in several of those videos, you can see them practicing shooting tennis balls on the floor or paper plate on the floor. That tells you what their mindset is and what it is they're expecting to see when they enter. It is what they're not expecting to see or happen that's going to stop them, that's going to delay them. We are now doing exactly what they are expecting, and we are expecting different result. That is not possible.
It's the definition of insanity.
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
And with respect to the lockdown, you know, a lot of people look at the lockdown and they say, well, where did this come from? I'm pretty sure that the lockdown procedures came from prisons. And it is true that the prisons employ the lockdown in order to isolate and contain a situation so that, number one, they can minimize exposure of that situation onto other people. They can have an on-location response team go to that situation and neutralize it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the difference is that in a prison, you have a reactionary force that is on location. Right. So just merely transferring the concept of a lockdown to a school, what it does, okay, it tells you to close the door and stay in there. But remember, there's no on-site reactionary force that is on location to immediately respond to that. And that's why we need to do more. That lockdown needs to include barricading. It needs to include other things to protect yourself while you wait for that reactionary force, which is typically law enforcement.
And I think the reason why it might be so difficult, you're talking about a mind shift change for people. I think the reason why it might be so difficult is just we've done fire drills are the same as when I was in school, right? The fire drills we do. People are used to just doing the same thing. So when Columbine happened, the response to Columbine was to have things like, okay, code yellow means lockdown. Code red means evacuate the building. Or they'd make a special announcement, you know, Mr. Pencil, please call the office. And that means leave the, you know, we had all these different codes. And that was the first series of responses after Columbine. Soon after that, they said, no, you're making things too confusing. So now you have to change to this. And now you have to lock down. And you have to, we had shelter in place and putting aside food in the event you had to be. Now this is completely turning that on its head. And it's saying, no, you're not. You know, and it makes complete sense to me not hearing it. But I guess my point is that the whole mind shift thing that you're talking about for people is that in I guess in all fields, but in particularly in education, we see it a certain way and it makes sense to us and we get comfortable that way. And when somebody comes along and says, no, you're doing it wrong, and in fact what you're doing is putting everybody's safety at risk, people are shocked and they're, you know, it's hard to sell them on that idea, really, because what you immediately think about is, oh, well, oh my God, what if something had happened prior to me listening to you? You know what I mean? You think about what would have happened if a year ago I had been locked down and I had been doing what I was told to do, which was hide under a desk. And oh my God, that was the wrong thing to do.
So we're not selling anything, first of all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Except safety.
Yeah,
except people's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're saving lives to education.
Right.
And reality is what it is. I'm not making that up. None of us are.
No,
okay?
Right.
We've seen too many of those incidents occur again and again with the same results. Mm-hmm. Okay. After Columbine, we had Virginia Tech and many others, Fort Hood. Then we had Connecticut just last year. Mm-hmm. How many more do we need? It's not much different in Aurora Theater. Same mindset. You're in a theater, it's completely dark, one shooter in front of you. Nobody moves. Nobody can do anything. He doesn't see you, it's dark. Yes, there's confusion. Yes, there is panic. But a little bit of training would have gone a long way. Now, as educators, we love to communicate. We communicate all the time. I'm doing it to you right now. But you cannot communicate yourself out of a crisis. It's impossible. You can talk till your face go blue. It won't fly. You have to have people on the ground, knowing what to do, and following a cohesive plan of action. Right there, right then. That was one of the mistakes before Columbine that the law enforcement used to do. They don't do that anymore. They used to wait till an incident command is established outside and set up the perimeter, and somebody tells them how to go and how to do it and when to go and all of that.
Yeah,
that doesn't work.
They told us as principals to get out of the building. The first training after Columbine, or even prior to Columbine, and when an incident happens, you have to be out there to meet the police.
Right.
Well, heck no, I'm not doing that. I'm going in. You know, I couldn't live with myself if I ran out of my building and something had happened after I left the building.
But don't get me wrong. There are definitely instances where lockdown is appropriate.
Sure, right.
If you cannot escape and if you cannot hide and the shooter is nearby, you go to a lockdown. But not just lockdown, not just locking the door. That's not going to stop the shooter. The shooter in Connecticut shot his way to the door. It's not a problem. That's not a barrier. You have to barricade the door. That's different. And people need to be taught how to do that. Look, we teach our children and we teach ourselves in schools how to evacuate for fire, for weather condition, for earthquake in California, right? We teach them there about drugs. We talk about sexual education. Why can't we teach them how to respond and prevent violent intrusion? We can. Yeah, we certainly can. It's part of our responsibility and our duty, and we need to do that.
So, having been through all the things that you've seen in your career, and we touched on it, and I think Nick said
in the bio before the show, our listeners have heard.
Went through everything that you've done. One of the great things that I liked about your video and the training that we went through is just your optimism, and you're full of life, and you just your whole purpose is that life is beautiful and should be protected, and that to me took this whole the whole feeling of, oh my God, I'm sitting through this, and feeling of worry and panic, to thinking to myself, you know what, you're right. That should be my motivating factor so how do you keep that optimism after all of that you've seen and been through, and thinking about all of these things that you're thinking about and setting up these trainings?
Right. Well, I think I was fortunate to have good parents, good upbringing, good family, which instilled in me the right value, and an interesting life. I enjoy life very much. I love life. I love people. I think we're blessed being here. Every day we are here. And I've seen that many times. And every time I looked at someone's eyes when they were dying, there was only one message that was coming out. I wish I had more time. So life is beautiful, and we love it, and we protect it. It's not a gift that we can take for granted. It's like freedom. It must be protected, right? And in some cases, protecting life means fighting for it. There's one more thing worse than giving into violence, right? There's one more thing worse than doing violence, and that's giving into violence, right? And nobody wants to be violent. I'm not a violent person at all. I'm a very friendly guy. But when it comes to survival, it's very, very clear what needs to be done, right? So I think the future of ourselves as a country, as free people, is to be free of fear and to continue to love life. And our future is also the children, and we need to protect them.
That's perfect.
So, talking about children, you have 4 of them yourself.
Indeed.
A lot of the principals and the people who are listening themselves are parents, and one of the difficult things about the role of the principalship and the role in education is balancing your life and balancing your professional life and your life at home. So what's your philosophy of parenting, and how have you found the balance all these years?
It's a learning process, right? You learn as you go, obviously. You think you know it all before you get started. But after 4, I think I definitely know more about it than I did when I had the first one. And my main philosophy as a teacher as well, I've been a teacher most of my life. I taught thousands of people from all walks of life. And it's always been provide the right guidance, instill the right value, support what it is that they're doing, and then get out of the way. And in so doing, also maintain contact and open dialogue with school staff and administrator and the teacher. A lot of parents nowadays are like, okay, you're at school, you're their problem. That's not the way it works. I think that's one of the reasons why we have so much disconnect between some of those kids and their peers and their teachers and their schools and their parents, to the point where they can become this violent. I think that if parents would have a much more open dialogue and not an adversarial relationship with the teacher and vice versa, this would have been more of a community effort, working together at recognizing any issues early on, and then mitigating them and dealing with them appropriately and in a friendly way, in an efficient way. Now, obviously, there is some cases, where people have, certain mental issues or things like that. Mm-hmm. But we always deal with whatever issue there may be better as a group, as a collective. And I think we need to go back to that as a society, because, you live in a big city, but you're still part of a clique, or you're still part of a neighborhood. And the group you're certainly part of is your school and your family. And those two groups need to talk to one another. So that's how I've been handling my children and their education.
That's great. Well, one of the things we like to do when we have folks on is usually they have a reason for being here, and we like to give you opportunities. I mean, I'm sure that folks listening are going to want to learn more about you and your business. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about your company, tell folks a little bit about the company that you run, and if they want to get in touch with you, maybe the best way that they could get in touch with you if they wanted to learn more?
Sure. I'm the CEO of the Countermeasures International, and our leading program is Attack Countermeasure Training Certification. And the website is ACTCERT, ACTCERT.com. And you can go on there and learn the training and the program and the mitigative and response strategy online to a web-based learning program. Or you can have the training delivered to you, like we're doing it here this week, by a certified instructor. I have a group of certified instructors that is growing and is teaching across the nation, like Mr. LaTorre here. And you can have the training delivered to you at your school ground, or at your community center, or at your place of worship, or at your company for the matter, or at your hospital, and learn the material online in preparation for the hands-on course as well. So it's a comprehensive training package. I made it a point to make it so people have to certify. So it's not just you learn and you think you're not sure, you'll remember. No. This is too serious of a topic not to remember the fine detail and not to know what you need to know. So this is a certification program. There's a pre and post test, serious learning, and we've been doing very good, and more people are becoming aware of the solution that we provide. So I look forward to helping many more schools.
All right, excellent. Well, before we wrap up, do we have anything from the remainder of our panel? Dr. Reed or Mr. Farina or Mr. LaTorre? Anything you guys would like to add?
Well, I just want to say that, I enjoy the fact that the Downingtown School District has taken such a proactive measure towards educating their administrators, their faculty, and their staff. Not everybody's doing it. So you should be commended for taking that proactive step.
That's all Dr. Reed. It's all our boss. I mean, I'm kissing up to the boss right now because he's sitting here, but that's definitely, it's been a big push that he's had for the last several months. I guess for the last year, since Sandy Hook, especially last year. Well, this has been something, every principals meeting, we've been covering stuff about this. So,
well, you're definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's what leadership is all about, right?
Absolutely.
Some people talk, and some people do.
We should end it on that. Some people talk, some people do. That's going to be on my T-shirts next year.
Our quote for next year.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate having you here. And usually our listeners are wondering why we're not ending with our normal ending question, which we always ask our guests. If they had to be a superhero, which superhero would they be? But the reason we don't have to ask that is because this is a living superhero sitting before us. Mr. Alon Stivi, we appreciate you being here today, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Rockstar Principals podcast. I'm Mike Indeglio. I'm here with the boss and the doctor and Jon and Nick. just let's recap a little bit. Let's debrief. I think that's always an important thing to do. Why are we here tonight? Why are we talking about Alon Stivi and the ACT method?
Well, Mike, if it didn't come across in the interview, which is still fresh in my mind from the other day, I just think it's vital to drive the point home to folks that, this isn't an infomercial. This isn't, we're not invested in any way, shape, or form with the ACT training. It just had that much of an impact on us the day that we spent, well, actually more than a day, but the day of training that we spent with Mr. Stivi and his trainers, and how, in my experience at least, having been in administration since the days of Columbine, I was an assistant principal when Columbine took place, how I've seen the changes that have occurred over that time when it comes to response to this kind of stuff, and how this is the first time in all the years that I've been through a training that I had a training on school safety where I 100% agreed across the board with every single part of the method. And it was really eye-opening for me, and something that I felt should really be shared. It's really important in the interest of safety for all the kids all across the country. I think that the idea of responding to shooters in this fashion, that idea get out there.
I think even more than just for the first time agreeing with all of it, it's the first time, I think, since Columbine where procedures and methods have been placed in front of us that aren't counterintuitive to every natural instinct that we have. Most teachers and most principals, I think, want to be able to protect their students to the best of their ability, and that's not what's taught, or not what has been taught, at least up until now, which made this so much different and so much more valuable, I think.
There's a lot of programs out there, clearly, a lot of different opinions as to procedures and what should be done in situations like this. What do you think stands out about the ACT program and things and some of the messages that Alon had shared with you guys? What sets it apart, in your opinion?
This is what Jon has been saying the past couple days, and that's if you take one key point away from all of this, it's that this is a paradigm shift. It's a mindset shift, and Alon Stivi said it over and over again. We're going from passive to active. We're becoming part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And like Alon said a number of times, response time at best is going to be about 10 minutes for first responders to be on the scene. Until that time, in that critical 10-minute gap where most of the violence is going to occur, the on-location personnel become your most valuable resource, and that has to be us.
And I also think it's, for me at least, personally, and I hope people don't take this the wrong way, but one of the things that concerns me about just our society right now is that I feel as though we're too easily the victims. I feel like people are offended too easily. I feel like people jump to conclusions too fast and are prepared to play the victim all of the time. And at the risk of sounding blunt, you're not going to be a victim if you follow this procedure. You decrease significantly the chances of you being the victim because you're responding, you're taking action, you're striking back, you're trying to catch the intruder off guard. And that idea, I think, is so, it seemed so simple, it made so much sense. And it seems so normal for Alon Stivi and maybe what he's been through in terms of growing up in Israel and the experience that they've had there. And we talked at length about that, I think, in the interview, and how that's a complete mind shift for our entire society. This isn't just a change, a paradigm shift for school administrators or educators. I think it really should be a shift for our entire society. And I know, that might be hyperbole speaking of it at that grand of a size, but I really think it could.
And the mirror image to that is, it's not just about what our shift is going to be, it's about the message that sends to the would-be attackers. So whether it's terrorists or just an active shooter or a student, whatever it is, that person needs to see us as a threat. We're not an easy target. They need to see us as a place that you don't want to attack, that this is a place where we're not going to be able to just go in and pick people off and make a name for ourselves. And I think that that's just as important as the as the shift in mindset that we're going to be taking to do that?
Yeah, I think at one point in the training, someone actually asked the question, well, aren't you concerned about the potential intruders finding out your tactics, finding out how you're going to respond? And his answer to that was no. He thinks it's great. He thinks it's going to make them less likely to come after your school if they know that the people in your school are going to put up some kind of fight, as opposed to people that are just going to passively go along with, with whatever they're told to do.
Let's talk balance for a minute. Just obviously, no matter what method you implement or which mindset or strategy you take, obviously there are no 100% we can, promise you nothing's ever going to happen. But you're both also parents, and you know that you send your kids off and you want them to be safe. What do you say as administrators to parents who come to you and ask for a 100% guarantee that my child is safe in your school and that nothing like this can happen to us?
I say the only thing I can 100% guarantee you is that I will do everything humanly possible, and I will attempt to do even some things that would seem to be inhumanly possible to protect your kids. I mean, there's no way to guarantee somebody that their children are going to be safe. You're a fool. If any principal says that to your kids, that would throw up red flags to me as a parent, because there's no way to do that. But if you ask and you talk to them about what they're doing, and if the things that they're doing to you, you're comfortable with that, then I guess that's fine. But if the things you're hearing that they're doing are things that don't sound responsive enough, and they don't sound like they're going to react, that they're going to wait and see where the chips fall, rather than going back and facing this challenge head on, then this might be something you want to bring to their attention as a possible alternative.
And there's going to be parents who question this.
Sure.
Doing some research on the internet the past couple of days, we've come across a variety of different parent groups and Facebook groups who have been saying, that they totally do not support these types of methods. They don't want their children, throwing things at would-be attackers, and that they don't want. It's just horrible. It's going to cause more casualties. To which I would say that those people clearly have not done their research themselves and looked at what these programs are actually preaching, because the first thing that happens, especially with the ACT training, is that the kids are the furthest out of the line of fire as possible.
Yeah.
It's adults fully in the lead, and if when possible, I mean, the rule number one is escape. That's the first. You're not going after commando style trying to take down attackers and shooters. You're trying to protect the kids.
And you're not asking kindergartners and first graders to tackle the attackers either. I mean, that's just not what it is. It's about trying to get the people that can have some kind of influence physically over what's happening to take on the assailants.
The other thing I'd throw out there too as well would be there's also going to be skeptical principals out there, because there were a lot of them in our training session, from our own district. And the difference in their opinions and attitudes from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, when they were actually running these drills and taking down, a 6'4", 250-pound, former Marine, just totally different. And what you could see with their confidence levels and their ability to now feel like they can take the lead on this and make stuff happen.
And I'll tell you, before we even got into the physical part, the part that is still, I mean, it's 48 hours later, more than 48 hours later, the thing I still can't shake is that video from Columbine. I mean, he had a copy of video and audio that was synced together. I didn't even know this took place, but in the Columbine shooting, that one of the shooters had a phone that was, they called 911 and they left it open for the 911 operator to hear what they were doing, and have him all morning talk about how when you hide and cower, you're making yourself a sitting duck, and then to actually see it. He had the video, the security video of the library, and I don't even know how to describe it, except that any hesitation I had went out the window when I watched that video. And I'm just saying to these kids, and I know what's going to happen, but I'm saying in my mind, God damn it, get up. You know what I mean? Get out of that library. And I know they're not going to, and I'm not faulting them at all. I'm just saying that's the thought that kept running through my mind, because those two guys systematically went through that library. They weren't running after anybody. Because they were just that whacked out of their mind, I guess. They were walking systematically through that library, and if those kids could have somehow, gotten out of there, God only knows how different it could have been.
I hate to go off script here, but
Yeah.
just as a question, since you guys have been in this the past few days and you're thinking about it, and I don't want to get too political, but I feel like when we discuss violence and school shootings recently in the news, at least, it gets boiled down to a bunch of bullet points depending on which side of the view you're coming down, be it liberal, conservative. You hear, it's an issue is really mental illness. Oh, the issue is really guns. Oh, the issue is really safety. Dealing with this the past few days, what do you think the major communication breakdown is? What is the general public not hearing?
Well, it's interesting you ask that because, this course, the ACT CERT course, it's 25 hours of online instruction before you do the 9 hours of in-person instruction. And the first several modules and what you learn is a lot of what we already know as administrators. It's what we do all the time. It's response to intervention and instruction. It's SAP team. It's basically keeping an eye on everything that happens before you get to this situation, preventative, and it's not a profile. There is no profile for this type of thing, for school shootings. What there is, however, is behaviors that we look for, and this is the stuff that we already do that was just reinforced by this training. So the one thing that was a very positive, confident piece of I don't even know what the right term would be for this, but I guess a feeling of solace in that we know we're doing a good job of this part is that we're doing everything we should be doing in terms of keeping track of who these kids might be and the ambient and acute stressors that might be affecting them. But the question then becomes, you can't predict. So if it does happen, what do you do? And we're grossly underprepared. I don't think there's any question in the event that does happen. So in terms of the bullet points, and Alon Stivi and the trainers said this over and over and over again. Terrorists and shooters are trying to get publicity. They're trying to make a name for themselves, to leave a legacy of some sort. And right now, schools are an easy target to do it. It's a way to get a large body count, and that's why we're in the situation we are in that turn. And I guess the other thing you hear these days, which wasn't mentioned in the training and everything like that, but you hear autistic, you hear autism being brought up again and again, and you hear bullying brought up again and again. And again, there's behaviors to look for, not necessarily profiles, but I think the worst of those two is actually using bullying, saying that these kids were all bullied, that school shooters are being bullied. That's a term that right now in society that is thrown around. It's a catch-all for everything. And back to what you were just saying, John, about the victim mentality. Bullying, true bullying, is a horrible, horrible thing, and we should be doing everything in our power to stop it, which I really strongly believe we are. However, the term is thrown around and used way too rampantly, way too easily, and again, it's propagating the victim mentality.
Right, and I'm, as you said, Mike, there's a whole political component to this that, I'm not going to delve into because I do have strong opinions one way or the other on that. But I'm only going to speak to the things that I feel like I have control over. Okay, and my feeling is that, as Nick's saying, parents want us to guarantee. Parents do. Like you asked that question earlier. That parents come. I've been asked that question hundreds of times. I want you to guarantee me my kid's not going to be bullied. Please, come on. Like what, for his whole life? Just for the year he's with me? What do you want me to guarantee? That's just not feasible. It's about how we respond to this. We've all been in situations of bullying, either as the bully or as the victim, or most of the time both. And it's more about how we respond to that. The stuff we're doing with restorative practices and helping kids cope and deal with, and learn from those issues. That's the stuff that goes a long way. And that's a whole section of the training, again, about, the common threads of the similarities of the shooters and the schools that they come from and their environments. There's some thought that the environments that they come from are not places where that kind of stuff is happening. So, the only way I can answer that is from a school end. I'm not going to get into guns or mental health or, the news media. Holy cow. I mean, that's where I would go off if we talked about the role the news media plays in all this, because I think they're extremely culpable in everything that happens. So, yeah.
All right, well, we'll close it down with this. I know that I'm also an avid listener of the podcast. So I know that you guys don't claim to be experts. You don't claim to have all the answers. But since you do have the voice at this point, this is your forum. To all the other administrators, principals, schools out there that might be listening who maybe say, we haven't had any violence here. We haven't had any situations like this. Maybe our status quo is okay. Maybe what we're doing is fine. Maybe it's the expenditure or the politics in getting our school boards involved in making a drastic change or in getting a program like this to our school. Would you encourage them? What would you say to maybe roll the ball a little bit forward to get them? It sounds like you guys are proponents of a plan.
I absolutely, and I think it would be great. And I know there's a monetary end of it. It'd be wonderful. People could get the full board, soup to nuts training. That would be great. But do this. Go on YouTube, search the ACT training, search Alon Stivi training, watch some of the video clips, and start to get the gist. And see if you can begin to have that kind of conversation with your staff. That's the advice that I would give somebody, because that's my plan.
Just to build on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so they can find it easily.
Yeah.
It's actcert.com, or go onto YouTube and just put into the search engine Alon Stivi, ALONSTIVI. They also have a Facebook page. But just
you start searching it, you'll find it. No, yeah, it's just my concern is all too frequently, and I've done this too, is that we say, oh, there's not the money, there's not the time. Money and time when it comes to professional development. I don't have the money to do it, or I don't have the time to fit it in, or both. Okay, take a few minutes, sit down, search these videos out, and search what they're talking about doing, and find a way to get the training, find a way to down the line maybe get the training. But I think if you start watching those video clips and start trying to find ways to implement some kind of changes into your plan, into your program, and again, stop this. I just feel very passionately about stopping this whole idea of us locking down and just crossing our fingers and hoping that everything's going to be okay. And instead, if nothing else, putting desks and chairs up in front of the doorway. You know what I mean? Trying anything you can do. The whole idea is to try to, what was that, 10 to 13 minute window?
Yep.
So
your critical time gap.
Right. So try to train your people to do things to extend that time gap rather than making it just easy pickings for anybody to just walk down a hallway and go into rooms. Do more than lock those doors. As silly as it sounds, practicing barricading doorways, it just slows down the shooter, and it makes it more likely. It's going to decrease. It's just common sense. It's going to decrease the number of casualties that you're going to have.
And if you're still on the fence, if you're a principal, if you're a superintendent, if you're someone who's in charge of school safety, and you're worried about these things, and if we haven't convinced you to think about it at this point, even enough to go onto the website, think about this. You've been in the principal's seat at some point, if you're listening probably, or you're a teacher, and you know that in every situation that occurs in schools, teachers want the principals to take the lead. They want to know what's going on. And the bottom line facts are, and this is research driven now, Alon Stivi has done this work, so it's there. It's that when a situation like this happens, communication breaks down. The principal will not be the leader anymore.
Right.
So the adult who is in that classroom, the adult responsible for those kids, is now in charge and is responsible. And the combat stress syndrome sets in, your response, your fight or flight sets in. If you don't practice these things, if you don't have a plan, you are not going to have success. And this program prepares you for that. I would feel so much better knowing that my kids were in a school where the entire staff knew what to do in the event something like this were to happen.
And it goes back to, and I tweeted this the day we were sitting in the training, and I sent out that Teddy Roosevelt, that quote, that, in any situation, the best thing you can do is the right thing, the next best thing is the wrong thing, but the worst thing you can do is nothing. And that's going all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt, that quote. So that's not, something that's new. And that's what really, thinking about that is what really drove the point home to me, is that you have to be ready to do something and not just freeze up, not just cross your fingers and cower in the corner and hope that the person's going to, I know I'm speaking about it very matter-of-factly, like it's going to happen, and, we're all adults here. Hopefully you're not playing this for your kids, but if you don't have that mindset, if you're not prepared for, if you're just thinking, oh, what are the chances, what are the odds? I don't know what to tell you, but this is the thing that I lose sleep about. This is the thing that I spend my most time worrying about, fretting about, and I don't think I'm alone when it comes to that.
And I think to close, Mike, the Teddy Roosevelt quote, obviously very poignant, but I think Alon Stivi said it much simpler. And John, why don't you close us out with that quote?
Life is beautiful. That one.
That's the crux
of it. His whole passion is that life is beautiful, and that's why you want to do this. You get one shot at this. You have your life. It's the most valuable thing that you have. All the hell that he's been through, or things that he has seen. He's got this mentality that life is so important that's why you should have a plan on how you're going to protect your life.
Absolutely.
So that being said, we close this episode. And we humbly like to dedicate this episode to all those families and young people whose lives have been affected in any sort of way, taken or simply altered in any way by school violence, school shootings, and the like. Our hearts go out to those people, and hopefully, like you guys said, moving forward, our schools will be better prepared, and we can help prevent any of this from happening again. Thanks for helping RSP top the charts in the Edu podcast world. Keep it real with Twisted Steel and School Appeal.